Members, we're just waiting for the DCM. She'll be right back. And I think we have quorum, and we have a visiting member of council. Speaker Nunziata, hello, how are you? Good afternoon, welcome. Okay. Members, are we good? Good to go, good to start. Excellent. So, good afternoon and welcome to meeting number 12 of the Economic and Community Development Committee. I want to welcome all our committee members as well as members who are in attendance with us today, and that's Councillor Nunziata, and as well as members of the public and to the media. You can actually follow this meeting on the agenda and debate on your tablets, your computers, smartphone at www.toronto.ca/council. In the event of an emergency, you may hear a fire alarm or an announcement over the public address system. If there is an emergency, I will recess the meeting. If we need to leave this room for any reasons, please use any of the doors. There are three, one to my left, one to my right, and one to my back left. Exit routes from this floor are marked by green overhead signs. In the event we need to evacuate the building quickly, the nearest emergency exit is located through the doors beside the audiovisual booth and across the hall via the stairwell, which leads downstairs to the back exit of City Hall. The Economic and Community Development Committee acknowledges the land we are meeting on is a traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. Members, I thank you very much for being here this afternoon with us. Apologize that we were not able to start the meeting as scheduled this morning. A matter did come up which I had to attend, and Councillor Lai as well, and we didn't have enough for quorum. So, under the matter of declarations, are there any declarations of interest on the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, I'd like to ask for a confirmation of the minutes of the January 14 meeting. Councillor Lai, all those in favor, opposed, that's carried. Thank you. We have speaker on one item, and one speaker has withdrawn. And additional communications. Councillor Cressy, you have a communication that you've submitted. We'll take this as other business. At the appropriate time, we'll ask that members consent to adding that particular item. At the end, I'll come back and ask to the agenda, and we'll deal with that. Okay? So, members, we will proceed. EC 12.1, Jane-Finch Initiative Community Development Plan and Update Land Use Planning Framework. Yes, we do. That's the one we actually have the speaker on. So I'll be holding that down in my name. Thank you. EC 12.2, Delegation of Authority to receive and allocate federal and provincial funding for the delivery of housing and homelessness services. What's you? Councillor Cressy is moving the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. The item has been dealt with. EC 12.3, Delegation of Authority to collect information to access eligibility for the rent gear to income assistance. Councillor Carroll is moving the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor Carroll. EC 12.4, 2019 fourth quarter status report on audit recommendations and opening doors to stable housing.
Can I hold that for questions?
Absolutely, Councillor Carroll, in your name. Thank you. Igor? EC 12.5, collaborating to enhance a pathway to innovation and growth in the Toronto food and beverage manufacturing sector.
Can I hold that for questions as well?
Absolutely.
You'll find that now I've read the agenda twice. I have a lot of questions. You may
All
rue
right.
the day.
We'll start the meetings from now on, Councillor Carroll, later in the afternoon, so we get all your questions. All right, we will hold that in your name, absolutely. EC 12.6, the China Mission 2019. Councillor, I just want to make sure that everybody's read that one. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. EC 12.7, Bloor-Yorkville Business Improvement Area BIA minor expansion. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. EC 12.8, Business Improvement Area BIA's 2020 Operating Budget Report 3. All right, so Councillor Carroll, I saw your hands first. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you. EC 12.9, Dangerous Dog Review Tribunal 2019 Annual Report. I'm going to hold that item down. I do have a motion on that particular item, so I'll hold that in my name. Thank you. EC 12.10, Ontario Green Screen Sustainability Initiatives in the Motion Picture Industry. That's actually good news. So, all those in favor? Opposed? That's good. Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Yeah, I actually thought so as well. Okay, EC 12.11, request for a presentation to the Toronto Francophone Affairs Advisory Committee arising from the committee's draft work plan 2019 to 2022. It's pretty straightforward. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Ford. Thank you. Okay, EC 12.12, city-owned space for DIY, do-it-yourself, music organizations. We actually had a speaker. The speaker has withdrawn their name, Mr. Wilson. And, oh, you would like to hold? Okay, sure, Councillor Carroll. Thank you. Okay, and new piece of business from Councillor Cressy. Oh, wait, so we get to, okay, 13, sorry. Just before I get to that one, EC 12.13, strategy for assisting live music venues. Councillor Carroll, did you want to hold that one?
Yeah, I better hold it. The questions I have kind of pertain to both, so.
Sure, we'll deal with them.
Probably I'll move them both after I ask the questions.
That's fine, Councillor Carroll. We'll deal with those. And now the new business from Councillor Cressy. This has been added to me. And Councillor Cressy, it's City of Toronto support for third-party community fundraising initiative that aligns with goals and priorities established by City Council. So I'm just moved to add this particular item to the agenda. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Fair enough. Councillor Cressy, do you wish to deal with it now? It's fairly simple. Okay. Well, what say you?
Just if we could move the recommendations in the letter, which is for staff to investigate opportunities, not direct staff to do anything in particular related to the event.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. That matter's been dealt with. Madam Deputy City Manager, I note that you have, by way of authority, a special guest you have invited to introduce to us today because Ms. Walcott has basically left the building. And so we have now brought in Ms. Walcott's replacement, or is that possible to replace Ms. Walcott? We have brought in someone who will actually take on the duties and responsibility as the general manager for Toronto Employment and Social Service, TESS for short. Is that correct, Madam DCM? I will turn the floor over to you for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of committee. I'm very pleased to introduce, I hope I get his last name right, Thomas Azousas. There he is. And
Will
he comes,
stand?
he will
Because I
stand.
can't see.
I don't know why he's in
Thomas,
the back.
will you stand,
up. He comes with us from the federal government, over 27 years for progressive experience.
Thomas, can I ask you to take the chair up here, please? Test the waters.
Thomas, please come on in. Have a seat. Thank you. Madam-
So he has experience, 27 years of progressive management experience with the federal government, employment services there, and so we're very excited that he's able to join us. And he and Pat had a week of overlap, so she's sort of introduced him to the city, and I know that he'll be going out meeting with the different members of both this committee as well as the different councillors. So we're very pleased to have him, and thank you for the opportunity to introduce him.
Thomas, from me to you, welcome aboard. On behalf of all members of this committee, we are delighted to actually have you aboard. Looking forward to working with you. Your area of responsibility is very impactful in the city. It has great impact to so many residents in terms of opportunities for them. I know you've come highly recommended, and I know that in the search process, you obviously were the best person for the job, and you've been retained as such, and we look forward to working with you. And I know that every member of committee looks forward to working with you and the amazing men and women who work in your department. I know that you will enjoy working with them, and they you, and we look forward to working with you to creating great opportunities and benefits to all of our residents in the City of Toronto. Thank you. Welcome. Okay. All right, members. Moving right along, EC 12.1, Jane-Finch Initiative, Community Development Plan and Update, Land Use Planning. We have a Troy Buddha, Jane-Finch Economic Opportunities Action Group. Is Troy here? Is that you, sir? Oh, great. Good afternoon. How are you? I'm well, sir. Just to help me with your last name, I don't know if I pronounce it properly. Badu? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you very much, sir. I'm not sure, sir, if you've been here before. If you haven't, if you just let me just explain the rules to you.
Okay.
Okay.
This is my first time deputing.
This is your first. Okay, great. Well, welcome. We really appreciate having you. You will have 5 minutes to speak. There is a clock. You don't have to time yourself, sir. We can time it. There's a clock to your left. And look, there's one behind you. If you can look behind you, that's your prerogative. But there's one to your left. Just look there and just see when it's approaching 5 minutes. Just wrap up. At 5 minutes, you'll be asked to stop.
Okay.
After you're through, members of committee may have questions of you, so they will pose questions. They will have 5 minutes to ask you questions. You may answer the question as you see fit. At the end of the asking you questions, another member may ask you a question and we'll proceed. If at the end, when you're through, no members have any questions for you, that will be the conclusion of your speaking to the committee. I would invite you, though, to maybe listen because others may speak to the issue and it may be something that's pertinent and might be of interest and so on. So I welcome you to the committee for your very first time, sir, and I hope that we do see you again. This is a very important matter. So I will start your time right. Are you almost ready?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, I'll start your time now, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Troy. I am the co-chair of the Jane-Finch Economic Opportunities Action Group. It's from the Jane-Finch Community Action Network, which is it's a group of residents and community leaders working together on a couple of elements. It's housing, economic opportunities, which is what I'm doing, education, food justice, and health. And the reason why we're deputing is on this item because, one, we support the item. We support the new approach to planning and in this particular process. However, we do have some concerns about the engagement piece, and I think that could be strengthened with a simple structure process, which that is creating a monitoring and oversight group to oversee the engagement piece and how decisions are made based on those engagements. I could go in depth with that a little bit after this. Why we think this is needed. Historically, it seems that planning was looking more at land and people. I think current examples of Eglinton and Little Jamaica and recent reports on what happened in the development for Regent Park, and after looking at the last 5 years, only 33 people, around 33 people were hired full-time, raised concerns on this understanding that if we build to attract investors into our neighborhood, that it's going to solve some of the problems we have with, in our area particularly, we have lower average household income, we're around 40% lower, the 60,000 versus 102,000 in the city. We have low education, we have a lower education attainment. We have these statistics, and the general assumption is investment is going to achieve those things. I don't think that's true. I think we need to think a little broader than that. The Jane-Finch community is surrounded by two of the largest BIAs in North America. It has York University that's been in the community for a long time, and without active management of those things, we haven't seen hiring in our neighborhoods. We need to think more about the consequences and the people. I think two pieces of this report actually shows this oversight in the way we currently do things. One, they talk about the history of the neighborhood and the transition from getting land from the indigenous community that was here, talk about a couple of developments to where we are now. It doesn't talk about the people. It talks about land and development, not about people, and I think that's an oversight that we tend to consistently have. I think a second piece is just looking at, in the document, they talk about when Metrolinx was considering the LRT project, that there was a real estate market study that was done, and you can't help but question why wasn't there another formal study for the implications to people in the neighborhood. Our community has the high renter population, and if the real estate market goes up, it naturally pushes people out. I know there's some rent control to these things, but we're seeing this currently, that people are currently having rent evictions. Our housing coalition is dealing with some of those works. The recent Gosford fire in our neighborhood shows that people cannot afford to live in their units now. When we look at where people are working, a lot of the people in our neighborhood are working in manufacturing. There's no real conversation about what the future of manufacturing looks like and where people could get their jobs. A lot of precarious work, a lot of temporary workers, and we haven't seen planning understand the other implications. And this plan moves in a direction where we're looking at things from a holistic lens with other city initiatives, and it gives us some promise that some of these issues will be addressed and reduce gentrification for a highly racialized community. However, we have a history where city engagement does not work in our community. In fact, we have community organizations that were started, or community networks that were started because we felt that we need to advocate against the city and some of their policies. So engagement is very crucial for this to work. There's a history that those engagement processes haven't worked before, and there's lived expertise and community leaders that know how to do these things better. I think to make this thing strong, having a group to oversee and advise how engagement happens from a resident point of view and from a community leader point of view would be great, and to oversee how that engagement influences decisions, and be transparent on how actually things are done and how inputs are taken would make this thing better and ensure that Jane-Finch still works for residents that currently lives there.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. There are questions of you, visiting members? Seeing none. Councillor Carroll first, and then Councillor, sorry, I didn't. Councillor Carroll and Councillor Ford thereafter.
Oh, okay. Hi, thanks, Troy, for your deputation. I was just talking to the chair towards the end of your deputation because we both share some of your concerns. The report shows us sort of a three-stage engagement process that looks like it will tap into organizations like yours. It goes after sort of stakeholder groups. But the three phases seem to be, as you've said, really more focused on the development and having you make a shopping list of things you want to see preserved, and then where you fill in. It doesn't look like yet that there is sort of an economic development plan embedded in it, which I would think your organization, with its mandate, that would be exactly why you'd be attending. You'd be looking for that more than anything. Am I reading that right? You're looking for an economic development plan to be folded into all of this.
Sure. So a part of the work that in the plan, it talks about coordinating different approaches, and economic development, it's a part of that. It's a small piece.
Yes, that's what I mean. It seems rather small on the list. Yeah.
Small on the list. I think the idea of having an urban planning, this study with different lenses in it is important to move the needle on this.
Yeah.
Instead of the regular approach to it. So that's why I support it. I think even though I'm coming from the economic piece, I do a lot of the other work in the community and working with different groups. I think the engagement component, though, if we just pull the engagement piece out of, I think we do need an economic conversation, but the engagement component, we've done work where we consulted for the city or did work with the city. The recent poverty reduction strategy, it was our group that did a conversation in Finch. We gave input back in to Yonge Street Mission, who was contracted to do that work. That came back into a report. We don't know what of our concerns were taken serious or prioritized, how that actually influenced the report, and how the solutions addressed those. I think this is where
How
tension.
that influenced this report or the poverty
the
reduction
poverty
strategy?
reduction stuff. This is just experience.
Oh, okay.
So in this case, when we do another engagement strategy, although I trust some of the staff because they've been in the community, that can happen again where we're giving input and insight. There's prioritized by the city. They come up with a plan that affects our neighborhood, and we don't know exactly why they took certain things, how they prioritize the list. And this is where I think having a structure where select a few community groups or however you guys want to structure that could oversee how engagement is done, how engagement influences decision, and the transparency to give back to residents on saying, this is what you said, this is why they chose this way to.
Right, right. So it appears that they have learned that lesson. Maybe, I believe you've already been consulted. I think yourselves and Jane-Finch Coalition Against Poverty and some others have been already consulted. So it looks like you've already delivered that lesson, because there is a piece in here that talks about meeting with you after they finalize the plan, so that it would be clear.
Yeah.
Do you think it needs to be ongoing, though? Should we call it the final phase? Or do you think that while this LRT is having this impact on the community, as it will do, I can tell you from being on the Shepherd subway line for a good 20, 25 years, it ought to be ongoing as opposed to actually using the word final?
Yes, I think it should be ongoing. I think it should be like, I think we need more, ideally this should be co-designed by the community, because at the end of the day, you guys are leaving when this project is done, and we're the ones living with the consequences of this. I think, and just the history of trust, like we need to ensure, and I think there's good intentions, and it's said in the report, and we have those conversations, but there is no structure to ensure the accountability to deliver on the things that they want to. These are new processes. Land plan doesn't talk about gentrification, and to do something new in a space that they don't, like they might not be the experts in or the people that do this kind of consultation all the time or understanding authentic engagement, like having people to be, this is a priority, not just creating a report, is needed, and having some sort of oversight on that, and hopefully that's community leaders overseeing that. But just we need to trust that somebody's advocating to ensure that those priorities that are set out are going to consistently be done. I think the staff are great at, are the ones who are pushing it, but we've been burned before and we can't be burned again because no one's doing a planning study after this. It needs to be some sort of oversight and some sort of accountability structure that.
Right,
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ford?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for coming in. I represent the neighboring ward in North Etobicoke, which the LRT will be coming through, and we're, I think, over the next few years, we're going to be turning our minds to this stuff as well as the LRT is going through priority neighborhoods and marginalized communities. So I really appreciate you coming here and sharing some of those concerns, because I'm sure my community would have some concerns as well in how this rolls out for the long future. But you spoke about a model of engagement, which the recommendations here is to do that, is to engage with the community and to start that dialogue with community members, businesses, stakeholders. So it's a really wraparound thing here. Is there a model out there, I know you mentioned a few other neighborhoods in the city, that you have seen work well with community engagement and something that we should be looking to do here?
There's a lot of best practices for community engagement. I think we're connected with the city staff, and I think a part of the process is to learn from communities. We know a lot of that. We constantly do a lot of community work in our neighborhoods. We're happy to share, and some of the city staff are sitting at some tables and already engaging. So yes, there are preferable practices. I think we need to think long-term about, like, it can't be a transactional relationship. We can't just go in because we're doing a report. It needs to be, how are we aligning what your goals are with what the residents and community groups' goals are, and recognizing a community development approach where community is going to lead this at the end of the day, because we're only here for an intervention, and see how things align. But those are longer conversations, and city's already doing a lot of work reaching out to us and getting those best practices. And there's a lot of community work groups that could would advise on those things. I think it is important to recognize that although the engagement's there needs to be an oversight on it and an accountability structure, because once again, these are, what do we actively manage and what do we passively manage? We are actively managing the deliverables. So you need to have a planning, updated land use, updated like a community development plan. These are things that are needed. We're passively managing, and we're hoping for the best intentions of the city to do great engagement. And I think they're on the right path, but just having a structure to ensure the community that there's oversight on this, and that if there's any concerns, there's a way for us to understand how to influence that and to address those concerns, to strengthen that. I think just a structural, I'm not asking for much, but just structural, because a lot of the things are there, but it's more of, like in the document, it talks about
You want to know where your feedback goes.
But then like it talks about that Covenanti Anti-Black Racism Unit and a Growing in Place project being advisors to the engagement. Like, and those are people we could see trusting and see that it's going to come from a good place, but just being an advisor doesn't mean that there is some influence to ensure that the best practices are in place. You know, like, we could give you the content, but like, who's ensuring that you're accountable and to deliver that? It's just a procedural thing that we know from your community, especially in the Woodbine Casino area. Accountability and monitoring structure is very essential to actually deliver the things that we want.
Right. Have you spoken with the local councillor, Councillor Peruzza?
Yeah, we haven't spoken directly about this particular topic, once again, because like the process is usually a difficult piece. Like, for example, this came out last week Thursday. In order for us to organize around this and to have those conversations is pretty difficult, but we do have a great relationship with our council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ford. Anyone else? So, sir, just from me, you quite eloquently talk about the engagement piece, which is creating and understanding, I guess, the oversight and monitoring and so on. And one of the key words that you've used is accountability. Accountability not to the city, but accountability to the community.
Yes.
Is that a piece that you want to make sure that's codified in this, so that there's a full understanding with respect to the roles that the community will be playing, as well as what they can expect to learn as part of the process and how they fit in? Is that what you want to achieve?
Yes, I want to create, I would want in the foundation documents of this initiative is to have an accountability structure for the city to deliver on the things that they want to for community in particular. We're a heavily racialized community, and these developments for the longest time, or from our experience, has been development for the future and not for the people there. And we can't be developing communities for the future at the cost of residents today. And I think that's just clarify that process piece. I think it's all aligned. I think the work that the city is doing has that, but it just didn't have a formal structure of being accountable to the community.
Right. So when I read the report and I see the framing of it and the lead that the Executive Director of Social Development and Finance Administration, and then it gets into economic development and so on, and of course planning, it seems to suggest that there is a great big lens that's being looked at as part of this opportunity with SDFA, Social Development and Finance, and so on. You're saying that's great, but in addition to that, the community's ongoing involvement should be not only top of mind, but should be contained in this report and as part of recommendations. That's what you're saying?
Yes. So
Okay.
there should be a structure where community and racialized groups from the neighborhood sit down, like be able to listen to what the engagement process is happening, advise on that, how that engagement process is shaping the future plans of the two different reports that are coming out, and then how that's being fed back into the community.
Right. Have you seen the letter from, or the note from the local
Precinct?
councillor?
Yes,
You've seen it?
I've seen it.
And are you satisfied with it?
I think the councillor recognizes that this is a new initiative that is
Yep.
that has the potential of doing some great work.
And you just want to add to that layer so it actually really benefits and have the impact to the community. This is what you're trying to do.
Accountability structure. Because like we know from our neighborhood that these ideas, once again, universities in our neighborhood, from the last numbers we checked, it was like 1% hires locally in the Jane-Finch community. Two largest BIs in all of North America hires a ton of people in manufacturing. Highest population in our neighborhood works in manufacturing. Somehow there's a gap to get people there. We need to understand how we're doing this a little better, and I think accountability goes on one part of this to ensure we could do this a little more equitable and make sure we hit our targets and we don't replicate some of the things that we've seen in Regent Park and in Eglinton.
So because we introduced the new general manager for Toronto Employment Social Services and he's here, I will ask this question to you so that he can hear. You just said that you're bordered by two of the largest BIAs and a university. You have a large population, but you don't believe that that population is being engaged in terms of creating opportunities for them, both with respect to the BIAs as well as the universities. They're not hiring them. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, caveat, York University is now working because of the anchor strategy and working with communities to increase that hiring. So there is work happening, but for the longest time, it hasn't. The two BIAs, one of the BIAs, the one Duke Heights, tried and are trying an initiative to increase local hiring. There's thoughts about that, but there's no incentive for them to actually do that. They're not. That's not their motive. Their motive is to find people, and people doesn't include place. If you have local businesses in a neighborhood or a university in a neighborhood, their goal is just to find people wherever. There's not a mandate to focus in a neighborhood, and for long we've been told if we have business come into a neighborhood or incentivize in our neighborhood, they're going to benefit us locally, but that's not the case in our neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your presentation. You were terrific, by the way. Hopefully we'll see you here again.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you. Speakers to speak. Or it's questions of staff, okay? Questions of staff, visiting members of council, seeing none. Councillor Carroll, will begin with you, please.
Yes, thank you. My questions are actually about engagement as well, similar to the community member. The engagement worries me a little bit. It seems to be in 3 phases, and in a way it's already begun, because you've in just forming this report, I understand you've already done a little bit of engagement. Am I right about that?
I'm going to hold your time.
Who's answering the question?
I don't know.
Have we done some early engagement in forming this report, forming this plan? He said, what's the question?
I don't know who's, okay, he said that?
So I'm
Okay.
just
Go ahead then.
re-questioning.
Starting your time again.
Thank you. Okay. So in forming this report, has there already been a little bit of engagement to get to this point?
Okay, through the chair. I'm Andrew Farncombe with City Planning. In the development of this report to council, we have had limited conversations with key stakeholders in the community to seek input on this report. But I just wanted to point out to the committee that one of the proposals in our methodology going forward would be to engage with the community during this first phase of work on the development of an engagement strategy to seek input on how we can best access the expertise that exists within the community, work through existing community infrastructure structures, and also to build on both the people and place assets that exist within the community.
Okay, so they will actually help form this 3-phase engagement strategy. And this is where you'll fold in our division, SDF&A, and other divisions. They'll actually be part of implementing it?
That's correct. It's a three-division collaboration with other divisions.
So that should allay some worries that it's really just about land use. They'll be listing priorities in the neighborhood, et cetera, and they'll become a part of the overall plan. I'm wondering if you've looked at, this is an interesting group. In a way, you know, there are challenges always when you go into a community like this. In a way, I'm kind of jealous. You know, as the Shepherd subway sort of landed on Shepherd, in the part where I'm at, around the Peanut and Parkway Forest, there wasn't near the number of good, organized advocacy groups like this. The group we heard from Mr. Badu, from the Jane-Finch Coalition Against Poverty, places like that. We didn't have those groups to get involved in the community development plan that would go along with the land use development plan and the secondary plan that resulted. They have those groups. And I hear them being engaged here, but what will you do to reach people who don't organize with those groups, who don't take part in activist and advocacy groups?
Through you, Mr. Chair. For example, one of the things we did when we were doing the Lawrence Heights redevelopment initiative, we identified community members themselves who we basically trained up in a lot of these background issues around planning, around community development, economic development, and they became advocates within their own community and built their own community network. And so I visualize that kind of thing happening in this instance as well. Again, as Andrew suggested, there are a lot of assets, both physical and people-oriented, in the Jane-Finch area that will provide a wonderful amount of background information. That's kind of what the first phase of this is all about, is sourcing out all of that information, finding out what's really important to the community, and making sure we build that into our communications and into our final programs.
Okay. If I can delve a little deeper here then, Mr. Chair, I get that, and that was especially effective in Lawrence Heights because it has a real sort of, it's a fixed area. But along this transit line, there are going to be groups that are going to organize and stay engaged the whole time. And then there are going to be sort of the outer ring who, if they don't interact with those groups, they just see buildings popping up and feel this sort of loss of control. And does anybody care whether I'm displaced or not? How does this land use work? Why are buildings so tall? You know, the basic understanding around transit development. I'm wondering if there's been any consideration of doing something that's sort of randomly selected, almost like a, you know, in conjunction with, not replacing the organized groups that have great trust and hold in the neighborhood. But has there been any thought to doing something along the lines of a citizens' assembly, along the transit line, that randomly selects folks to become engaged on a regular basis with this group, to understand, even if they're not the usual engaged folks, that there gets to be a deeper understanding in the ring of population after that, what the heck is happening as the transit line starts to affect the neighborhood?
Question.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair. Certainly that's one of the things that we are going to be scoping out with the communities about how best to engage them, but we visualize a number of things about going actually out to where the people are. We speak to in the report talking about community barbecues, we're talking about planners in public spaces. What we did, for example, when we were doing the initiative around the High Park redevelopment, we went out and put planners in the subway stations to talk to the commuters, talk to people. So that's the kind of thing.
That's for the people who don't go to meetings.
Councillor Carroll.
Okay.
And that's the kind of thing we visualize in terms of the depth of communications around this.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Any further questions from visiting members and members committee? Seeing none. Just a quick question for me, please. Is based on the report that exists now, and I've had a chance to review it, and based on what Ms. Troy was asking, it's not a difficult situation if we were just to simply incorporate a motion that directs you to basically work with, let's say, a resident advisory group in the community to provide information, advice going forward and so on. I mean, I think it's an opportunity to facilitate the concerns of the community. It's an opportunity for staff to hear from the community. It's an opportunity for residents to feel that they're engaged, because we want them to be engaged, right? Would this not be a good thing?
Through the chair, absolutely, and we will use the model that we have used for the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit and for the Poverty Reduction Plan to have residents engaged in not only advising but also holding the plan accountable. And so we will use that same process to identify members of the community to be part of this.
Right, and it doesn't impede the process, doesn't impede anything. It's actually an asset and it's valuable contribution to the process. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll be moving such a motion. Okay, thank you. All right, speakers. Councillor Carroll, to speak?
Yes. So, Mr. Chair, I think you and I in our questions and Troy in his speech, I think what we demonstrated is that in terms of city engagement, we all have a different idea what that is and how you do it. And there are a number of different ways to do it. And sometimes a thing comes along that is so big and is so important that we actually ought to do an all of the above strategy. We want organizations like the one that Mr. Badou is a part of to be actively involved in this, because they have huge capacity because they've been working it all along. You also want to call out and get community leaders to do kind of the reference group that you're talking about, to get some people who sort of have some representation. They represent something. I'm suggesting also, out of the benefit of hindsight, over where I'm at, watching what a quarter of a century of transit just jumping into a neighborhood has done, I'm suggesting adding to that the whole concept of the Citizens Assembly random selected group. Like if you look along the Finch West LRT, they're all dealing with the challenges in that neighborhood. Everyone, whether they live in this building or that building, or a post-war bungalow, or a TCHC development, they've all been dealing with the challenges along the Finch West LRT line all along. But to pull out a random selected group, send letters out to 2,000 people and see if a couple hundred answer back, and out of that couple of hundred, pick 40 or 50 people that you're going to be committed to for the next 20 years. We're going to tap into you guys every couple of years and see if what we started out developing and what we committed to is still on track. How we doing? Do you still understand what's going on? So that we can check whether or not we are in fact doing a good job of making sure the community is part of developing this new community. The organized groups that already are organized and have trust in each other, and some supporters who trust them in the neighborhood, are in a different sort of situation. And the people who might fall through the cracks, you won't know who they are until they've already fallen through. And we had that for a while in Parkway Forest, and I think still, in some of my buildings in the Peanut still, there are people for whom all this growth and transit has just sort of washed over them and left them wondering, am I even a part of this neighborhood anymore? So we struggle with that. 3 community centers and a whole bunch of new community groups and a whole bunch of participatory actions later. We're trying to get there, but you guys are in this great position. You don't have to wait till the end of it to go back and correct that. You could actually do it now. You could grab a randomly selected group so that you're really dealing with someone who's not a meeting addict, doesn't know these groups, wonders what's going on, and build their capacity so that they're just another reference group that you could be going back to throughout the whole change. Because there's the build out, which is really hard, and then there's the development aftermath, and all of it, the community perspective from all sorts of different viewpoints is really going to be meaningful. And learning what we've learned in other transit lines It's a component we've never used before, and I'm not going to move a motion about it. It could maybe be talked about by this reference group that Chair Thompson is going to move, but I would suggest that as an undertaking, it should be a topic of conversation of that reference group once it starts. I'm going to support that motion and say they should talk about a random selected group to add to the mix of who's telling you we're okay in this community, keep going with the progress. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Okay, members. Anyone else to speak? Okay, seeing none. I have a motion that Councillor Carroll just referenced, and I referenced when I was asking questions, so I may just ask the clerks just to put the motion on the screen, please. Members, I'll just give you a minute to read it, and then I'll start to speak. The motion, I think, seeks to do what I believe Mr. Boudou had been seeking to request. And I think it's really important that Councillor Carroll, you pointed out, in terms of community engagement and so on. I mean, what is that definition? It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people and so on. If you take, for example, the crosstown that's on construction now, folks in the very west have a different opinion as to what it means. Folks at Yonge and Eglinton, folks coming across at Leslie, and folks coming across into my area, Golden Mile. But what is really consistent is that there is a desire by the residents and the public at large to be engaged, to want to be involved, to ensure that their community can be a better place with respect to their input. And I think that for all of us as elected officials and administration, the input of the public is extremely important, because oftentimes we find that many times people are not really that interested, particularly in matters, and other times they're very interested in other matters. It all depends on their perspective and the impact, and whether or not they think that there is a opportunity that their engagement will make things better. In this case, I think the residents who are coming out are saying, hey, look, we want to be a partner in this process. We want to ensure that our voices are heard. We want to engage in the process to help to make things better. And that's what I'm hearing loudly. I think it's really important that we are supportive of the process or the request to be accountable. I think it's, quite frankly, fundamentally important that we allow a system and a process where residents can monitor and residents can check to ensure that things are being done in a way that allows them to, first of all, understand that it's going the right direction and that we're accountable to them as part of this particular process. So I thank Mr. Boudou for coming here to inform us as to his concern. But I also want to thank the staff. This is a really good report. This is a good process, right? And all of our different lenses are being shined on this process, as it is what we've done Woodbine, what we're doing across the Golden Mile, and all the different NGOs and partners and so on are coming in. This is a very different approach from what we used to do in this very, chamber at City Hall and in the committee room. We used to just put things on the table and that's it. That we didn't have all of these amazing professional people to help us to really clarify, to demystify, and to ensure that we take into account interests, community's interests, the general public interest, the interests of growth, the interests of development, and the future development that is going to enhance and benefit those residents who are today very young people who may not have the voice, but they will be the people that will be living in the community in the future. They're looking at us, our stewardship, in terms of how we help and how we advance the opportunity of development. So all of us are in support of that, and all of us want to ensure that this is the process that we put in place. My own community dealing with the Golden Mile. We have 43,000 new people who will eventually live there, 19,000 new jobs, a variety of other benefits and so on. But it's not just for us as legislators and politicians to make the decision. We have to engage everybody, and so all of that engagement is taking place. So this is an example of that, and this is why I'm moving this particular motion. Thank you. Any further speaker? Councillor Lyon, do you wish to speak?
I just wanted to quickly echo what you just said there. I don't have a question or anything, but I think in my community as well, we started in the early stage of engaging the community people, all the community, different diverse background. We started an advisory committee with the engagement. I think it's a really good thing that we're doing. I don't know how things are being done in City Hall before, but I think we're going in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comment, Councillor Lyon. Okay, one further? Okay, seeing none. There's a motion on the screen, members.
As amended.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, carries. Item as amended. All those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Thank you. We are now moving on, members, to the next item. And Councillor Carroll, this is your item that you've held. EC 12.4. Sorry? Do you have a question? Yeah, no, I'm going to get to that. I just wanted to highlight the next item that we're actually moving to. Visiting members. Councillor Wong Tam? Questions? We have no speakers, so just questions of staff.
Yes, thank you very much. And this is probably the first set of questions is to SSHA staff. With respect to the new choice housing access model, how does the modernization of this new choice-based system support applicants in the selection process?
Thank you through the chair, and thank you for your question, Councillor. The new system is intended to provide more information to applicants to housing to allow them to make more informed housing choices. There'll be enhancements to the website that provide more details about the actual buildings. There will also be maps which they can provide proximity to services such as TTC, transit, and daycare. Most importantly, and I think there'll be an actual move-in date for the unit, so people can make sure they're willing and able to move on the posted date of that vacancy.
So that's very helpful. Obviously, having more access to information, people can make a better and more informed decision. Then, how will and is that the big significant system change right now? Just more robust information, more up-to-date information?
I would say if I was going to categorize the biggest shift, it's moving from a more passive system where people are on a list and wait for a call, which they often receive out of the blue, asking them an opportunity and whether they're willing to move in a relatively short period of time. The intent of the new choice-based model is to provide an opportunity for people who have selected that location and that unit size, make them aware of eligible vacancies, and for them to self-select whether they wish to be included in the process. Those individuals who select that they want to be involved in the process will revert to the legislated criteria and the City Council's priorities to offer the unit to the most successful applicant. Through our pilot, we found that the number of offers required to fill a unit through a choice-based model was significantly reduced. So while no more units will be created, there'll be an increased efficiency through the system. It'll be easy for applicants to navigate, and importantly for our housing provider partners to find an eligible applicant sooner.
Okay, so it's supposed to get people access to housing sooner, and that's a very positive thing. I like this. I like the direction that's going in. I want to just ask some questions about table number 1 on page 12. On that particular table, it cites some units that are unavailable, meaning non-rentable, that are tied to revitalization projects. And I just want to understand, how did you determine when to have those units be? This is a question probably for TCHC. What was the determination factor for when those units are vacant, and then for how long units are vacant for until the actual demolition? Because right now there's about, at this moment in time, the latest figure, you've got just under 1,500 units that are not lived in. And I just want to know how long they've been vacant, and then how do you determine that is an acceptable period of time for vacancy?
I'm Scott Kirkham. I'm the Director of Strategic Planning for TCHC. And through the chair, the answer to your question is there are two major categories of units that are held for redevelopment. There are units that we hold pre-development to move people into. So as you know, the RTA doesn't allow for us to evict someone without cause. So in order to get a pool of units that we can move a building's population into, we need to start holding, sometimes years in advance of demolition, units, and then build up a sufficient pool so that we can relocate our population into that pool. The second class is once those people are relocated, we have units that get demolished over time.
So because it seems like there are periods of time that stretches into years, and that you are bound by legislation to hold, and at the same time we have a massive housing crisis, how do we reconcile that? Is there a way for perhaps, is it a legislative chain that's required? Do we need to manage this a little bit more robustly? What needs to happen?
Final question.
I have one more.
I'll answer at least initially, Councillor. Twofold. We are meeting with TCHC on a bi-weekly basis to improve the vacancy situation. That happens on a number of fronts, on operating, but also in terms of the revitalization. Through the partnership with Create TO, the Housing Secretariat and Shelter Support and Housing, we're really pushing to, and planning, quite frankly, we're looking to push and speed up and consolidate the time it takes for units to be decanted, demolished, and revitalized. So at the face of it, to get the most supply possible is to really shrink that period where those units are out of service to the smallest possible time. In circumstances where units are available for extended periods of time, we're actively working with TCHC currently to determine whether we can leverage some of those units on at least a temporary basis to manage some pressures within the general housing population, but also, as the AG recommended, to explore whether we can support temporary populations from the shelter, including refugees, for a period of time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you. Oh, well, maybe I'll go back to that one. That was one of my areas. So if you could just clarify for me again. So that big number, the 1493, that includes the ones that we're slowly acquiring so that we can place relocates. But the units, once demolished, during the period that they're demolished and being rebuilt, are they incorporated in that number?
So in the roundup number, yes. We have a complex and arcane system of categorizing these units, but the big roundup number, the approximately 1,500, which fluctuates,
yeah,
that would include units held for relocation, units that are being held for other capital outside of Revite, units that are being held pre-demolition, that have been demolished, and units that are in the process of being rebuilt.
So how many, because I think that's a bit of a misunderstanding. In that number of 1,493, how many of them are perfectly habitable units that have become vacant and we're just holding on to them because we know that soon one of our revitalization sites will need to go through the relocation process? It's not the whole 14. What quantum of that 1,493 are those units?
I don't have that number on me right now.
Question, Scott. I think it's important. I'm going to focus on this in my speaking routine because there's a lot of hysteria around this number, and there's no getting around it, is there? You've got to put the demolished units somewhere, so we've built them into this number. Yeah. So I have some other questions. So page 13, right after that, the disadvantaged group. It's one of the priority risk groups, and I know you've been working on it from the report. People who are now in such crisis that their address on the list is the address of a shelter. They represent a priority. They moved up to the top of the list, and it says here we've taken the disadvantaged group status on the list from 40% of them were listed as being prioritized disadvantaged applicants, disadvantaged households, I should say, to 73% if we know that that classifies them, that alone, using a shelter as an address, why is that number not 100%? Why don't we just look for those addresses, put them all on right now?
So we do need to verify that the individual address on their application is the address and where they're staying. This number has moved from 18% to 70%. We've made significant efforts to improve it. We're currently taking the waiting list database and bi-weekly cross-referencing against the shelter the shelter database. So there is ebbs and flows within the population, but we're moving in a very, very fast direction to get closer to 100%. Really proud of the work we've done.
So 73 is pretty high with that problem.
Correct. We've gone from, over a third improvement of out of 100 in 4 months. So we're moving in the right direction.
Okay, and I wonder if you could speak. I was kind of hoping there'd be a presentation, because there's a piece I don't understand, which is the thing that counselors so often deal with in their office. I went to check to see where I am on the housing list, and I don't exist anymore. Somehow I dropped off the list. They got deactivated. Then the process of reactivation is something that we end up having to advocate for them. Can you go through for us, how clear is it to them, and I understand sometimes there's a capacity issue, but how clear is it to them when they get on the list, whether they're online or they walked into Elm Street, that they have a role to keep themselves active? And under this new software, how many extra steps are now built in for us to help them understand that year after year after year?
It's a great question. I think it's twofold. So to answer your question directly, we remind them as often as we can. On the communication and on the phone, but with a wait list that's passive driven, that takes 10 years to get a call, people have not been diligent in the past about keeping their application up to date. Yeah. We have also taken it upon ourselves to do much more robust outreach through robocalling and otherwise to make sure if their application is out of date, they are notified by phone and instructed to either log into their system, which we'll take as contact, or talk to an individual at Access to Housing. So we do our best to keep people apprised of their requirement to check in once a year. We remind them, and when we deactivate, their application is not canceled. It remains inactivated until they contact us again, and they get reestablished at the same point they would have been on the list for 18 months.
Okay. One more question, Mr. Chair, because this is feedback I've gotten. I'm a well-heeled individual with lots of money and lots of passwords and PINs. How hard a time are we giving them? People walk into Elm Street and they say, look it up by your PIN. I'd be stuck. Are we helping these people? Are we giving them a hard time if they lose their stuff? Does this new software do a better job of helping people stay logged into the system, and if they lose their stuff, they can easily get back in and make sure they keep themselves on the list?
Okay.
That'll certainly be part of the development process, but we're not at the PIN reset stage yet.
Oh, hold on a sec. I'm sorry.
They don't have a PIN
Did
reset.
I just get a bad answer?
No, I don't think so. It's just
Sorry, excuse me. If you wish to talk to the counselor offline, please do so. We're in a process right now. I'm moving to the next counselor, Counselor Carroll. We can go to a second round if you'd like, but let's follow the procedure. Let's follow the procedure. Okay, let's follow the procedure, okay? Thank you. Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an interesting conversation, actually. I have some questions out of that procedure, that process. In terms of some people that are dropping out the list, and I do have either friends or constituents calling me to help, how are we helping people that are, the first language is not English? Do we have some mechanism in place so that we won't be swamped with a lot of these calls and, because we can only help so much?
It's a great question. We do have partnerships with multilingual service providers, and in part of our work as we continue to consult with the public, we'll be reaching out to a number of groups to figure out how we can do a better job and improve access limitations, whether it's language, cognitive ability, homelessness, etc. So we're on the road there, Councillor, and if you have specific examples that you'd like to share that could inform our work, I'd be happy to hear about them.
Would there be some communication pieces in different languages if we do so needed? Because a lot of them don't understand the process, And when you're trying to explain to them, and a lot of times it's lost in translation, and and do we have communication or education pieces so that to be proactive in helping these people before they come to us?
We do have communications, general communication in some multi-language. It doesn't, not all material that's distributed is created in multi-language.
So does it mean that if my office wanted to ask for help, can my office call you to get some of those communication pieces that is in place now?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Lai. So, members, we've set a second round, and so we can start off. Councillor Wong Tam, do you have further questions? We'll start with you. I'd just simply like to follow the procedures and get to a second round, which we have that option. So I'd like to take that option now and allow for a second round of questioning. Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the indulgence. I guess I'm going to follow up with Councillor Lai's question. With respect to the automated system where you touch base with the individuals either by voice drops and then there's a digital communication back and forth, on the application form, does the applicant get to signify the language that they want to be communicated in? And then because the system is now going into automation, which is digitization, can you not provide the renewal process, the touch point, to activate, to keep that applicant active? Can you not push out that information in the language that they've indicated that they prefer to be communicated in?
That's a very good question. I don't have the answer with me, Councillor, but I'm happy to look into that and get back to you, both councillors.
Okay, thank you. And I do think it's pretty important because there's a lot of times where people are reaching out to our office, and within our office, we don't have the ability to speak in the language that they are looking for service. With respect to table number 1, I'm sorry for my fixation on table number 1, but there is a particular category there that indicates that there are 0 units available currently for crisis transfers. So if there is somebody that needs access because of medical emergency or any other sort of crisis definition by TCHC definition, it looks like there isn't a place to house them. Am I reading this report correctly? There's 0 units available for crisis transfers?
So I can speak to that from the TCHC perspective. Through the chair, I'd say that we at TCHC, since the Ombudsman's report that raised our past imperfect practices around crisis transfers, we've moved to basically a 0 wait list model. So when a person qualifies for crisis transfer, they move to the top of our internal list and we move them immediately. Our basic position is that the definition of crisis means you need to move immediately. And so that's how we've structured our system.
So seeing that number at 0, you're telling me is a good thing?
Certainly from the TCHC perspective, it's not a surprise and it does represent a good thing.
So then I guess my follow-up question is that if you have 0 units sort of held back for crisis transfer, how long does it take for someone to access a transfer through the crisis definition?
So my experience with it, in the cases that I've dealt with, we are talking about a matter of a few days. We would identify a person would have to go through a process. So there's process time. Once a person's identified, the caseworker responsible for that case would immediately start looking at what existing vacancies are in the system right now and beginning to match them. There are complications. Crisis transfers related to gang affiliation can often limit the areas of the city that a person can be moved to. That can cause some delays, but again, we're talking days, individual days.
Okay, and that's very encouraging to hear. Sometimes I think the experience from those who believe they're in crisis, but because they don't fit within the TCHC definition, their experience will probably tell us that it's not days that they're being transferred. But with respect to the, and I guess I want to maybe just delve into that a little bit, how do you reconcile that? So there's the TCHC clear definition around what constitutes someone in crisis, and then there's the lived experience for those whose situation by themselves they see as in crisis. whether it's someone who's fleeing violence but they cannot report it, and oftentimes you need to have a police report, or they are just not able to prove it because the abuse or perhaps is not as clearly documented. Is there a distinguishable gray area that allows for more consideration?
So you raise a really good point. Structurally, in order to achieve a zero list model, the number of the bar to qualify for a crisis has to be pretty high, and so we do have a very high bar. Things like being under imminent threat for your life would be a qualifying factor. Your point about a police report is also valid. We require police validation of that kind of threat. Your comment, I think, is something that other people have raised. It's something that we're thinking about. The one outlet for an outlier situation would be the CEO's prerogative to create an exemption. I can think of an example that you might be familiar with, where a person was experiencing an interaction with child services as a result of their living arrangements, and we moved them under the CEO's transfer, even though they didn't qualify for the main policy.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carroll, the question.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, my second question is, could you repeat the answer to my last question, because I didn't hear the answer. Belt it out.
Through the chair to the councillor, you asked about the PIN reset. Currently, applicants who need their PIN reset can either contact Access to Housing or through the new coordination with the Human Service Integration, they can also facilitate a PIN reset. You asked me about the new technology and the PIN reset. I don't have those details there. We're currently working with the developer on the platform, and that will be part of our work plan as we work towards implementation in early 2021.
So they have to, currently though, they have to make trips to those agencies in person.
They can do it. They can do it by phone.
They can do it by phone. Okay, I have evidence to the contrary, but I'm going to take your answer. I'll talk to you about it offline. Okay. The other thing is, I'm confused about what. We chatted this morning after the meeting was recessed about under the new system, under the new software, you're going to be able to sort of pull together. I'll use the example of a complex in my own neighborhood. You would, if a unit was available in Allenbury Gardens, you would pull together all the people who wanted that unit size and that development on their application, and help me understand again. First, you ask them if they want to be part of the offer, and they might say, no, where I am, my kid's got one more year of school. I'm right so far?
We will make people who have expressed interest in that unit size, in that property, we will make them available of the opportunity of a vacancy.
Okay, but you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you used wording this morning that first you would ask them if they wanted to be part of the offer. Am I paraphrasing that right? Is that what you told me this morning?
When you complete your application, you will be able to select preferences where you will want to know what.
No, I'm sorry, no, I'm not at that point. They've been on the list for years, but now a unit has become available. I'm sorry I'm taking time, but I want to be clear about this. Now a unit is available in the complex they chose, those many years ago. So a unit size becomes available, and you now have a software system that will pull up for you all the people who wanted that size unit in that complex. Is that right?
That's correct.
So this morning, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but what you said was first you would ask them if they want to be part of that offer?
So the situation we spoke about the morning, you didn't preface it by saying they were already on the list.
Okay, well then maybe, I'm sorry if I didn't articulate right. What I'm getting at is this. When you call them and say, okay, we have, the minute you call them, is that now number one and you got 3 strikes and you're out? If you call them and say, do you want to be part of this offer?
No.
And they say, my kid's in school. So if they say, my kid's here for 1 more year, I don't want to consider it at all. Are we writing down on the list, okay, they've refused one?
No.
Or we move on?
No. So people will be presented the opportunity, and they will be able to select whether they wanted to be included in that selection process. If they say no, it's not a refusal, they're not interested. We will then take the people who've selected interest in that vacancy for that day, and we will apply the centralized waiting list rules that prioritizes who will get that unit.
Important.
If an
Okay.
individual at that point declines the unit, that would be refused, that would be categorized as a refusal.
Okay, because now I have a problem at the bottom of page 4. It says files can be made inactive for a variety of reasons, including no contact from the applicant, returned mail, or applicant not ready to move, which is different than what you just said. You're going to call them, and if they say, I don't want to be considered now, page 4 makes it sound like they would become inactive if they said, I'm not ready to move.
This is complicated, may warrant an offline discussion, but this report is drafted in the current system, all right? It's responding to how the waiting list is currently managed. What we've been talking about through your questioning is where we're moving to.
Right. So that's where we're moving there, but we're not there now.
That's
And
correct.
does the applicant know that if they say, I don't want to be considered, that they've now started to close the door on their file?
Yes.
Is that crystal clear to them? Because we have people calling counselors' offices who don't realize that they actually closed the door on themselves.
Yes.
Okay, then we do need to have a conversation offline.
right,
So maybe the
good.
next quarterly report will
As you may
have the
actually
improvement.
move a motion to ask for that information to come forward, Councillor Carroll. So, thank you. Anyone else to question? Okay. To speak. Councillor Carroll, wish to speak?
Well, I'm not going to move a motion, Mr. Chair,
That's fine.
because I understand that this report is going to come quarterly until we get to.
Sam, but you may
the
want to
new
ask for
place.
more detailed information so that.
No, I can do that in my office, but I'm not going to move a motion, but I will indicate this. As these periodic reports come forward, I don't think that it's a realistic expectation that we're just going to move receipt and move along. I'm going to keep asking this many questions till we get to where we're going, because this is the biggest problem that any of us deals with, is the people who put themselves on the list and then somehow they fell off the list and they don't really understand why, because they don't always have the same sort of support systems that we have ourselves. So. And sometimes our staff are grappling. The other one that I didn't find time to ask a question about that we didn't really tackle in this report is, I would love to know, along with changing the system and improving the system, what sort of redesigns are going into the information template that people look at if their first interface with Housing Connections is to look on a website, and what sort of training and plans for refresher training that we're working on with caseworkers, because there's a lot of tension when you go over to Elm Street, or a lot of sometimes people feel dismissed. They say any news, I'm desperate, and they get a printout, here's your choices, and they're all still 13 years, and it can feel painful. It doesn't say, they don't stop and say, as a result of coming here, I'm now activating your file. You don't get a lot of explanation. And I think that's because everyone's overwhelmed in the current system. So I'm not going to move a bunch of motions, because council already did that. But what they did do was say, while you go through this change to this wonderful choice-based system and the purchase of this technology and things getting improved, we asked for a quarterly report for a reason. So I'm going to hold it every time, and I'm going to ask questions based on whatever calls I've had in my office since the last time this quarterly report rolled through. And I don't think that's unfair. I think that's why council asks for periodic reports as we go through this system. Those are my comments. I have no motions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Lyde to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any motion, but I just wanted staff to take note. Maybe next report, I wanted to see some of the equity impact. I would take that people that don't have people's mother tongue who's not English. I wanted to see what we are doing about those those group of people, and just to be mindful that as Toronto has grown to be such a multicultural city, we need to be mindful of some of those needs for some of those people who are really wanted us to help. And I got a lot of calls from my office for helping these type of scenario as well. And we just want to, like I always said, we wanted to be proactive in how to cater to the needs of the residents of Toronto. So the next report, I would like to see some form in that form. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lai. Thank you. I just want to add my voice to this. I mean, this is a very important matter, actually. I know that the calls we get, as Councillor Carroll has pointed out, and Councillor Lai intimating to that, we get into our office is, I guess I would use the term confusion, right? People are confused. They don't know whether or not they're on the system. And if you investigate further, you get information, apparently you're not on the system, they're not sure why they got off the system, didn't know they got off the system. But there's a process that we're going through. We are actually trying to, as I see it, fix a broken system, right? And so the new system that the staff is talking about, the work that's actually being done, is actually being developed to address the challenges that we're trying to address, and Councillor Carroll and Councillor Lai and Councillor Wong Tam are trying to bring forward. And so, and I'm not in defense of the staff. I don't think they need my defense. I think that they're giving us the best answer that they have at this particular point in time, as well as sort of remembering, are we asking a question about current status or the future and so on, and where we're going to that. And so my reference, Councillor Carroll, with respect to motion, which you said don't move, and I don't disagree with you. I'm just simply saying to help to, I guess, if you will, and not even tailor, but just to kind of direct where our interests are and trying to identify through the calls that we get in our respected office to the staff in terms of the angst and the issues that are being raised by members of the public, because we get a lot of them, right? And so we want to have that clarity and so on. And so this is part of that particular process. The system's broken. We get it. The important thing is that we're trying to address that broken system, trying to fix it to ensure that all of the different factors and categories that we need to actually bring in place are being addressed as readily and as quickly as possible. And there might be some things that we still have to fine-tune because that's part of the process in terms of addressing an issue where the system is actually not responding to the needs that's in existence and so on. So the report is helpful. Councillor Carroll has aptly pointed out that, hey, we're going to be monitoring this. We're going to be paying attention to this on behalf of those who are responsible to act on behalf as members of council and so on. So this work is going to be done, but I think that's a collaboration of approach that we need to focus on. It's not adversarial in it by any means. It's that working with the staff, working with ourselves to ensure that we can bring in a system with a platform that addresses the needs, that helps the public who are in need of housing. One of the fundamental challenges that many people have calling our office dealing with housing is, I mean, it's so immediate. It has such an impact and so on, and their very core is impacted because of the fact that they are either of the view that they're going to get something and they're not going to get it, or that they didn't realize that they're not on a list that they thought they were on, and so on and so forth. So there's changes. So staff have indicated that dealing with it. So there was no motion dealing with this particular item and so on. So I'm just going to move the item, the information, move receipt as it states in the only recommendation with this report. And so all those in favor, opposed, that's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll and Councillor Wong Tam and Councillor Lai, and all the other members of council. So, moving right along, Councillor Carroll, we're back to you because you had lots of time to read the agenda, with more than you needed. EC 12.5, collaborating to enhance pathway to innovation and growth in the Toronto's food and beverage manufacturing sector. Do you have questions of staff?
I do.
Excellent. So, Mr.
I
Wolf?
have to have questions on this, Mr. Wolfson. It's not very often we get a report that actually implores us to enjoy this report.
Is Miss, oh, there, you're close
And I
to a
did.
mic. Okay,
And
great.
I did.
So, Councillor Carroll, I'll start your time. Thank you. Go
Thanks.
ahead, please.
Well, it's just two quick questions, Mr. Chair. The first one is on the recommendation. It's just come back with an update from the interdivisional working group, but you're not looking in the directions. You're not looking for any direction from us to actually look at building a cluster, even though the report says that perhaps the time might be right to go back to looking at that idea of trying to build a cluster that has a couple of major producers and some incubation that we looked at years ago. But you're not looking for direction in that regard, and you're going to come back to us over a year from now. So is that a topic of conversation that's proceeding there?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That was so the purpose of the forward was because there's a lot of people that read these reports that are not familiar with the city or the food and beverage industry. They could be from another city somewhere else in North America that are interested in what we're doing here. I do believe that that the time is right to revisit a campus for food and beverage in the city of Toronto. And to engage both our provincial and federal colleagues to look at this as well. But the reporting back to council or to committee in a year and a half is because I believe that because it's a significant manufacturing sector in the city, the largest manufacturing sector in the city.
It's scattered.
And it has to do, it entails a lot of the work of a lot of divisions across the city. That in order for us to grow it and keep it in Toronto, we need to have proactive discussions rather than reactive discussions when a company has an issue with something that happens within the city. So that was a purpose of setting up this interdivisional working group and meeting to deal with some of these issues.
So would it be a welcome motion to ask that the group make that a topic of discussion and report on it specifically? Because if you're reporting back in the third quarter of 2021, I hate to say this, but we're in a downturn right now. We're breaking breaking records in the stock market right now. By the third quarter of 2021, God willing, we're in recovery, but we went through a downturn. So there's an added reason why the time is right. Would it be a welcome motion to ask that the interdivisional work actually turn their mind to giving us some actual recommendations around cluster development, physical cluster development in your report back in a year?
It could. The reason it was mentioned as the third quarter of 2021 is because this group it's not developed. Hasn't been formed yet.
Yeah.
It may take a while to be formed. It may take a while to come up with the terms of reference for the group. It's not something unfamiliar. Councillor Layton formed the group for the craft brewery industry, the Toronto Cask Force, as he called it. And that was a similar type of thing where we wanted to help grow the craft brewery industry in Toronto, and it was very successful in working with planning and other divisions in the city to address some of the hurdles that the companies were facing.
Okay. Okay, I'll speak to it then, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none. Just a couple of general questions from me. Food safety and food security. How do we rank when we compare to other jurisdictions in other areas? I know in the report talked a little bit about Chicago and sort of, concern there and so on. Given the fact, and I don't know whether or not this is current, but I had heard some time ago that there was a move to cut back on inspectors and so on in this area sector. There is more reliance on industry to basically provide their own sort of, if you will, inspection and facilitation and so on. Where do we stand, considering food is such an important element for our very existence? So the quality of it, the safety and security of it, if it's not assured, what can we do and where are we in terms of this area?
So the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has developed new guidelines that they launched in January, and it's called the Safe Food for Canadians Act. It's a federal act that they're beginning to roll out to all the food companies, and we've actually assisted to set up an information session in North York March the 24th. The CFIA will be coming in and speaking to a number of food and beverage manufacturers to talk to them about what they need to know with the new regulations that have been rolled out. So we have in terms of our reputation worldwide, it's excellent in terms of food safety and food security. And that's one of the reasons why in the Barton report a number of years ago, they suggested that the food industry will be the saving grace of the Canadian economy in years to come, because so many countries will want to have food products from Canada.
Right. And then I guess my final question to you, we have seen challenges of various odors and impact on areas in which proximity is an issue. We have companies that are doing extremely well, and yet we have people complaining that the odor coming from that company is problematic. They want them to move, they want them gone, et cetera, et cetera. We know what the impacts are. People could go to Guelph, they can go to Hamilton, they go to a variety of places and so on. What are, if you will, some of the opportunities for us in terms of working with our residents? What are some of the things to do to address some of these fundamental challenges? I give you two examples. One, we have what used to be Dad's Cookies, which is now Mondelez at Progress and Brimley. Great odor for some, offensive odors for many, for a few. But we then have Atlantic Packaging, which is just on the other side of the street, that has emission of some odor. We have had it tested. The Minister of the Environment have gone in, their licenses being reissued and so on. They're a large employer, but there's an odor that emits periodically, and they've done a lot of work to their defense, to scrubbers, et cetera, et cetera. We've worked with them and so on. So there is one that is, for some, an offensive odor, and it's close to proximity. One that's an odor, but it's not offensive for most, but nonetheless it's an odor. What are the intersectionalities in terms of dealing with some of these challenges?
The issue for most companies is that both odor and noise are very subjective.
Yeah.
If it's bothering you, it's a major issue. What all the companies are looking for is regulations. What do they have to do to conform? And, the Ministry of Environment has very specific ways of monitoring smell and monitoring noise. And if the company puts in a certain amount of capital into reducing the smell and the noise, and it's below the Ministry of Environment regulations, all they hope for is that the constituent will be dealt with, and say to them, they're in compliance. There's nothing we can do about this. And so, but every time an inspector would come from the city, from our municipal group, they have to react to it. They have to spend money to do something to react to it.
Okay.
That's all the companies are really looking for.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. To speak? Are you speaking? Yeah. Are you speaking of this? Okay. Okay, so Councillor Carroll will be speaking. Do you have a motion on this, Councillor Carroll? If you could just read it out, and maybe the clerk can actually type it while you're speaking.
I'll be typing it while I'm doing it,
Just tell us
but
what
I
it
think
is.
people can guess what it is. It's basically that in the next report back, that staff ensure that an early area of consideration for this advisory group that's being put together of stakeholders should be looking at a post-secondary partnership and physical cluster for the food industry, something similar to what we looked at a while ago and sort of ended up not doing. The reason I'm moving the motion is to really sort of give them the task of really wrapping their heads around it so that it becomes a key part of the report coming back to us. One of the things that I found very interesting in the report, the group that exists in the Netherlands is clustered around a university that you looked at very closely. Clustered around a university. We have not only the universities but colleges that have some of the leading chef and food and hospitality programs in the world. And, you know, scores of people go through chef training. Like my sister, they end up in food production. They don't all end up in restaurants. We also have a growing cohort coming out who are food scientists, and they make it into our production. So it would be crazy not to include a post-secondary institution in such a cluster. And I understand that the advisory group has them in its makeup, and so they can certainly comment on it. I really think that we may have to, approach economic development over the next couple of years as making some lemonade out of the lemons. 2020 and 2021 will be. We've been through this before, and it took a while to recover. We lost 30 million in revenue during SARS, and just out of the TTC alone, that's going to happen again. My daughter reports that she's found a seat on the subway 3 mornings in a row, and I thought to myself, oh my God, that means we're losing money. So we're going to see this economic stagnation or downturn. And then in the recovery, opportunities may present themselves. And so I hope that this group is looking at that, because I think you're right. This is the most important employer going forward in terms of automation of work. This is the one sector where automation actually, in our community, generates jobs, doesn't take them away, because it creates more potential to put food facilities in our area and start production. And so when you have a happy ending out of automation, you run with it as fast as you can. So I'm moving that they report back, because I took to heart what it says in the report, that perhaps the time is actually more advantageous right now. And this report was written before the stock market broke records 3 days in a row, dropping. So I just want to see that in really sharp focus in the report when it comes back in 2021. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Anyone else to speak? Okay, seeing none. The clerk's just working on Councillor Carroll's motion.
I may have got the name of the advisory group wrong. It's the GTA Food and Beverage Network? Is that going to be the final name of the advisory group?
There was, through you, Mr. Chair, there was an organization called the Greater Toronto Food and Beverage Cluster, and it was developed by the Board of Trade, handed over to Food and Consumer Products of Canada, and virtually nothing has been done for the last 2 years.
So the group that you're going to be talking to now is yet to be named?
Correct, and
maybe the motion should just say group yet to be named.
And the second recommendation is to reactivate this industry advisory group. So there's 2 recommendations. One is internal at the city to deal with some of the issues that food and beverage companies are facing. The second is an outside industry advisory group. I think your motion is more towards that outside industry advisory group.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Ms. Wolfson, there are 3 recommendations, right?
Right.
Okay, I thought you said 2, but there are 3.
No, there's-
It's fine, deal, okay, that's fine. No worries, we're good. Okay, so members, may I just ask for your indulgence? We're just going to hold this item down and allow the clerks the opportunity just to complete the motion. We can come back to it. So all those in concurrence? Okay, we're going to hold this item down. All right, so moving along, we are now moving to EC 12.9. That's the Dangerous Dog Review Tribunal. And I'd held that because I'd had some discussions with staff. And simply, I don't really want to belabor the point or speak to it too loudly, but there was a question about the appeals fees. Some people feel that it's a little too high, and I asking staff to look to see if we could lower the appeals fees. And then also, that's maybe, Clerk, Madam Clerk, do you have the motion? You can put it on screen so you guys can actually see it. I'm sorry, I'm reading out to you. So, and then the second part, and I was working with staff with these motions a couple of weeks ago. And, pardon? What's the cost? I don't know. We were looking at it. So, sorry, the actual fee is 350, I think what the number's $351, and for some people, $51.52 to be exact, including tax. And I was just asking to see whether or not those fees could be reduced because apparently it creates a burden and a hurdle for some people in terms of the whole appeal process, right? Actually, this is more to appeal your dog offense than it is to file an appeal to the LPAT, and even the OMB, actually. I think it was cheaper than the OMB. Is it? It's okay. That's right. I don't have any questions for you, Colonel, if it's okay. But so this is what I'm attempting to do. And then the other piece of it was that B, allowing the tribunal to reassess a dangerous dog order at a later date to rescind a dog order if necessary. I think that it's possible that dogs' behaviors can change. And that's what I was actually thinking about with respect to that. I don't know, but really I want to look at assessing this. So that's the impetus with respect to my my motion there. So I'm free to answer any questions if anybody has any. Oh, no, so we do want to know what the fee. The fee is $351.52.
Have not asked how much they're going to reduce to.
I'm not suggesting what they reduce to. I'm just asking for a report back to see if it's possible. They may come back and say, well, our costs suggest that it isn't, and that's fine. But the thing is, some people who want to appeal are not able to because of the actual fee. And I just wanted to make it, determine if it was possible to do so. And so just to say, this is a really good report. I mean, there is a tremendous amount of issues relating to some of these dangerous dogs. But at the same time, I don't want to penalize people who are working with our staff and or working with the community to deal with the behaviors of their dogs and things like that. I want to be able to review the process, whether or not does a dog always become a dangerous dog? I don't know. And that's what I'm trying to ascertain. Go ahead, Councilor Carroll.
I just don't understand the format of the motion. If I can ask a question of the user.
This is what the staff have
You want
actually...
to report back on this?
Mm-hmm. Looking at the feasibility in the fourth quarter.
Okay, I didn't see the date at the end.
In the fourth quarter, yeah.
Yeah, but it's status quo until we get this report.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I'm not making, I can't suggest that they make the changes until they do the investigation and process.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, they may come back and say, this is adequate, this is appropriate, and so on. I'm just asking them to look at it to see whether or not there's a need to assess this issue with respect to reducing the appeals fee, and at the same time, whether or not there's an opportunity in terms of looking at reassessing a dangerous dog order that's been issued and so on, whether or not a dog can be rehabilitated and so on. People can be, can dogs be? I don't know. So that's what I... All right, not touching that. I don't want to say anything further. So if you're in agreement with respect to my motion, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Councilor Carroll, I'm not touching that because I may resemble those remarks. Okay, moving right along. EC 12.12, which is a city-owned space, and DIY, do-it-yourself music organization. Councillor Carroll, you had indicated that this is, similar to, I guess we should deal with 12 and 13, which is strategies for assisting live music venues update. So we'll deal with them, but so we're at the number 12 now.
Yeah, just a quick question. First of all, it was really exciting. I had to look it up because it said that ABC No Rio had no home, and I understood their new home to be finished, so I looked it up, and it looks like it is finished.
I don't think they've moved in yet.
Oh, okay, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So sometimes computer generations are now so accurate that I couldn't tell if I was looking at real or computer generated thing. Soon to move in. So my question was just, I'm really glad that the advisory group is now looking at this. The idea of getting a sort of DIY center like this together that some agencies could use. There's some models in that item. And then again in 13, we were looking at financial models of how we make venues more affordable. So I'm wondering if we take these two. It looks like what you've heard from finance staff is they would look at a grant system. So taking that and taking some of the models that you highlighted in item number 12, I'm wondering if my fantasy of having a BAM in Toronto is now possible if you sort of pull these two things together. If we could find a site that had a slightly larger venue, but some spaces, could you pull some agencies together under one roof and also employ the grant system that's being suggested?
Thanks for the question through the chair. Obviously these strategies are set out to support the music community in a number of different ways. The first one, 12, talking about identifying city-owned sites right now, which are either underutilized or unused or mothballed, ideally in a state of decent repair, so no major structural renovations are necessary, that through an REOI process or an RFP process, we could identify DIY music organizations, perhaps with a lead tenant, to go in an interim tenancy period of maybe 3 to 5 years and put together a coalition of programming that would satisfy some of the city's desires there, diversity, all ages shows, and perhaps co-working space, things happening during the day as well as at night. We've done a lot of consultation with the DIY community to see what kinds of things are on their checklist in terms of where's the building, how big is it. What we're hoping is that staff in corporate real estate management and perhaps Create-TO can identify a handful of properties across the city. This shouldn't be just a downtown thing, but there may be opportunities to pilot this program in other parts of the city as well, because we know there's a tremendous amount of creativity and musical activity coming out of communities across Toronto. And on the other hand, as I've identified, the revenue services folks are saying in order to benefit the bricks and mortar music venues, so your Horseshoes and Camerons and Garrisons of the world, not the DIY folks, looking at the idea of a grant or rebate program to assist them with their property tax burden. Very few of them own the building in which they occupy space. They're paying property tax in ever-increasing measures to their landlords. So this would be a program to help defray some of those costs. When this was raised at TMAC on February 20th, one of the members made a recommendation that I think closely parallels what you're getting at, Councillor Carroll, which was to see if the city could identify kind of a third way as well, which would be to help DIY organizations occupy spaces that aren't necessarily city-owned or underused right now. Yeah. So I think, I understand from past conversations you're very interested in Harbourfront. We've spoken with Harbourfront quite recently about what their music plan is. I spoke with them about them putting together a strategy, an overall music strategy. I don't know where that strategy is at right now, whether they're rolling out in the new year or not. But we would be looking at seeing if we can combine these ideas so that we're thinking big about not just, small underused.
Says we got to do the DIY thing. But in 13, the financial mechanism that you now have the word from staff as possible. They're separate items now, but they could actually morph together. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was an aspiration. Those are my questions.
I gave you a little bit of extra time just so we incorporate both. Okay. Did you wish to speak, Councillor Cressy? Any questions? Okay. Councillor Carroll, what say you with this?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was sort of an aspirational goal because, same thing. We may go through a couple of years here where if there is potential, now's the time to look at it. The issue of if we want to have venues and save them, who lives around them?
Yep.
Seems like that's kind of what Fabrica is. This is a public-private partnership. There's a music venue here. There's also some housing here. Maybe it's better to have artists in it because we're going to be making some noise. And they seem to have ended up with a model that works really well. While there is some city participation, it didn't all come from them. And so just really pleased to see that this is where TMAC has ended up because it seemed way out of reach before.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you can move the item then?
You bet. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Did you want to do the same with 13?
Sure, yeah.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. And we still have one left, which is, no? Okay. Give me a sec, just have Councillor Carroll review the food. Yeah. $12.5, we just have to finish up 12.5 and we're done. Members, committee, I'm just going to ask that we take a 5-minute recess to allow Councillor Carroll and staff just to review the intended motion. There's a little bit of complexity with it, so we just want to. So if we can ask everybody to come back at 3:30, that'd be great. Thank you. Hey, nice to meet you.
I was here when I was
Okay, folks, the meeting is resumed. All right, Councillor Carroll? You've sorted out, Madam Clerk? Oh, you're still writing?
No.
Okay, the clerk's ready?
Yeah.
So maybe ask the clerk to put the motion on.
The motion looks a little different now, but it's a good kind of different. The report back is going to come to us, having gone through our interdivisional working group, but what Mr. Wolfson recommends, and he's right, is that they're actually going to go out and talk to that GTA group.
Yeah.
They're going to be talking to the outside groups about this, and then they will chew on the idea in the interdivisional. So that the next time they report back, they were going to report back in 2021 anyway. They'll be really specifically talking to us about where their thoughts are around a physical cluster, because we have great food businesses from, in the heart of Councillor Thompson's ward all the way out to some great operations in Councillor Ford's ward. They're spread all over the place, as are some of our post-secondary institutions. But if you read in the report, if you read the report, you end up thinking, oh, that's interesting, and you end up looking up the one, you Google the one in the Netherlands because you never heard of it before, and find that it's really kind of the dream that we talked about here as far back as 2012, because it takes innovation from, closed loop packaging to food production automation methods and things like that are going on in those types of colleges that are looking at robotic manufacturing and things like that. And then clusters around it, the food businesses and the incubators. And so it looks like it is possible, but there isn't one in Canada, and I don't think there's even anything like it in the US. And, we're increasingly saying we can't be crossing oceans with our food. And so such a thing should exist in North America, and we're perfectly poised.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. The motion, members, is on the screen. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Councillor Lai, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, members, and thank you to the new addition, the all-star team of the clerk team has graced us with their presence this afternoon and so on. And thank you. And thank you to all the staff members who are here. Thank you. And Madam DCM, thank you as well. And members committee, thank you all. Thanks.